Good morning and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Castlekeeper Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video I am going to be taking my first preview look at Castles and Crusades Reforged, the Player's Handbook. Um, this is currently out in a Kickstarter. There's about 7 days left, and I will go to the Kickstarter page to show you where it kind of stands and what it includes, just in case you want to look into it and possibly um, not so much upgrade your current copies of Castles and Crusades if you do have them, because unlike other game systems, Castles and Crusades does not do editions, and that's always been the case since 2004 when they first released Castles and Crusades. They've done what they call printings, and from one printing to the next, um, in almost all the cases, the changes were more format wise and presentation and adding new artwork. And only on very, very few occasions were there minor tweaks to various game mechanics, but never the core mechanic of the game, never never the number of classes or races or anything that would absolutely require you to buy the newest printing of the game system. But I felt that this what is being offered in this particular Kickstarter was reason enough for me to look to replace my current rule books, the core three rule books, with what is coming out in this Kickstarter. And I will put this out there right now, right from the get go. Where it stands right now in the current draft, which is the second draft of the player's handbook, because they are obviously currently still working on tweaking it and such. Where it stands, I am not a big fan of every single aspect that they're doing. So, this is going to be a fair preview of what I see, what I like, and in some cases what I don't like. So, so even though Castles and Crusades plays a significant role on my channel as my go-to game, with probably close to 70 or more videos on Castles and Crusades. I'm certainly not coming, at it as a sycophant of, every choice that the company has made in the game's design. So, with all of that being said, let's take a look at the Kickstarter and where it currently stands. And I am just going to be highlighting the player's handbook at this time. So here, and I'm just going to take a look and see that you're looking at the same thing I am. So here we have the Kickstarter, and I will do a little. I will try to expand the view here so you can see it more clearly. So it is currently at $129,085 with 1,003 backers. It was fully funded. They were looking for a $10,000 goal, so it was fully funded in 13 minutes. Again, another reason for the low pledge number, because I know a lot of times that comes into play when people ask questions about, well, where does that really come from? This is reforged. It's not changing the rule system in any significant way. So there's actually less for them to actually have to change up or manipulate. It's a new printing, which usually, as I mentioned previously, usually involves more artwork and so on. So as you can see, I am a backer up here. I backed at the $175 pledge level, and I will go over what that includes as well. There are obviously other lower levels of pledge that you can do. But here is the campaign, right? So Troll Lord shifts its attention away from Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook and onto the Monsters and Treasures, which is the second book, the second required book in order for you to run this game system. You only need two books. You need the Player's Handbook and you need Monsters and Treasures. The the Castle Keeper's Guide is, I highly recommend it, but the Castle Keeper's Guide is not actually required in order to play and run this game. All the Castle Keeper needs is the Player's Handbook and the Monsters and Treasures. All the player needs is the Player's Handbook. So, Reforged here, the price only on Kickstarter is $25 for the Player's Handbook, and then the rest are their normal $39.99. So they're still only $40 for a hardback, which is not bad in comparison to other game systems. So this is what they're doing here. So this is the game. Castles and Crusades is a TTRPG that focuses on imaginative gameplay, allowing everybody in the gaming community to utilize whatever play styles they desire, now with revised non-OGL content. So that was the main reason for reforging here, is to eliminate all of the OGL content that was in here. So that's going to require some name changes of whether it be spells or magic items, and whatnot. And but everything else is going to remain the same. Its primary purpose is to give those who play the game an adaptable, responsive, easy-to-use mechanic that does not force any one style of play or the participants, and which does not restrict any play style. The system was designed to be rules light, allowing new players to learn the system in under 15 minutes and make their characters in the same space of time. Yes, creating characters is very quick. To achieve this, a simple and logical attribute check system, the Siege engine, was created. So everything is built around your attributes. Every action you're taking, can either be assigned to a particular attribute that makes sense for it, or it's already, it's very intuitive. You kind of know already what's involved. And then the player will choose for his or her character which are going to be their prime attributes, and then the others remain as secondary attributes. And all that means is that with a prime attribute, your target number base is a 12 rather than an 18. So it's almost like having a +6 to your attribute that is prime for any skill that would fall within that prime. Now, characters get between 3 for humans, 3 primes for humans, and 2 primes for non-humans, demi-humans, or half-orc. And one of the primes comes from their professional track, whether a fighter or a bard or a druid or a priest and whatnot. So there's a lot of freedom of choice going on here for the player in creating a very unique character. So not every fighter is like every other fighter and so on. There's no cookie cutter here. There's plenty of nuance within character classes and the character class race, combinations as well. Castles and Crusades was first created in 2003 and 4 and debuted in the Christmas of 2004. It was the first to use a simple attribute-based system as its key mechanic. It predated and in many ways sparked the OSR publications that followed and heavily influenced D&D 5th edition. So this is not a copy of 5th edition. This is a predecessor of 5th edition. This is a game in which some of 5th edition game systems and rules and such was derived from. So it's easily to argue that 5th edition is derivative of Castles and Crusades and not any other way around. Also, again, Castles and Crusades is one of the first, if not the first, fantasy tabletop RPG to get rid of the concept of editions. Rather, it does printings. The core of this game has remained unchanged, but for minor edits and a few revisions. It has played the same all these years, now with the revised non-OGL content, though it plays the same even faster. All right, so that's pretty much the purpose behind doing this, doing this new printing, as you can see. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to shift views, and I'm going to go and make sure we're looking at the right thing. So this is the previous printing. So this is the 5th printing of the Player's Handbook. And as you can see, it is 244 pages. It actually shows one of the earlier covers there. And let's see when this printing was, if we do have a printing. So this is the 8th printing. Wow, that's weird. It said 5th printing and then 8th printing. So I might have mistyped the Player's Handbook 5th printing in the text area. So this is the 8th printing, and the new one is the 10th, I believe. So this was revised in this was 2021. So yeah, a fairly quick turnaround on printings here. So 244 pages, and we will take a look here. I'm going to skip over all of this so you can take a look at the table of contents, and you can see how the table of contents is running all the way up through example of play is 232 to 234. So that's the real content of this book, right? Up to 233, let's say, pages, including an example of play. Now let's take a look at the new one. And so this is the new one, and you can see 290 pages now. All right, so much longer. This is the 10th printing, 2024, and you can see here that they have really streamlined the table of contents, right? So now you have something that's much clearer to see. You're going through, and it'll talk about the RPG, the classes, the races, completing the character, magic spells, the castle keeper and the game, which is where the rules mechanics will come in, and then finally the index. So they have they've expanded it at the same time removing several pages of that the OGL had taken up. So I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to start going over. I'm going to jump to the RPG, and so this is page 10, and I'm going to be following along. I'm going to switch views real quick because I really can't do this. I can't do this in a split screen because it will be just too much to manipulate and show you both. So what I'm going to be doing is I have the 8th printing here in my hand, and as you can see, this is the 8th printing right here, and I'm going to do a page-by-page comparison, at least through the initial parts, just so that you'll see that the content doesn't change from one to the other. And so I am going to go to the first character class in the 8th printing. And so creating a character, which is on page 12 here in the 8th printing. So I'm going to go here, and now I'm going to go to this here, and I will shrink this down so because you don't have to actually read it. And creating a character is also here on page 12, and the pages are identical. So, and as you can see, page 12. Now this follows through, and it goes all the way up through to attribute checks, and when I go to attribute checks here, the same page, the RPG attribute modifiers, primary and secondary attributes, attribute checks, all on page 14. So now we're going to get to the classes, and we have the same exact list of classes. So barbarians, bards, clerics, druids, fighters, illusionists, knights, monks, paladins, rangers, rogues, wizards. Expanding idea. So they do something here. They include assassins, but they separate assassins from the other character classes because there is a little bit more care that the castle keeper and the player has to use in properly playing an assassin within the game system, and I think that it's almost on the verge of running like an evil campaign, which many people have dabbled with, and it's a little bit more difficult to do as a game master of any game system, and so Castles and Crusades is basically separating it from the other classes, just as a mindful reminder that that you should handle this particular character class with some care. They don't necessarily have to be evil as it says, all right? Although not always evil, they are typically indifferent to the suffering and pain that they cause. So you're playing a character from a very different perspective, let's say. So a little bit less heroic as compared to the others, where most of these fantasy role-playing games are really focusing the players on doing, is playing heroic figures. So anyway, we're still page for page. So now we were on page 16, and when I turn here to page 16, we're directly in line. And this carries all the way through. So we have the barbarian class, and there is no changes within any of the mechanics of each of these character classes. I've skimmed through them. I've looked to see if there's anything significant, and actually I haven't come across any changes in mechanics at all. And this carries all the way through. So the barbarian plus 13. So this is the only change here. So they put in this 13 plus, which is basically telling you the levels. Instead of saying barbarian high level progression, it says barbarian 13 plus. And that might actually affect other character classes that might have a different high level progression beginning point. So, and I'll take a look at that to see if that's in fact the case. But they have the same skills. The fonts in some cases here have been changed. They've been improved in most cases where I've seen that they've made a font change to make them more clearly, legible. And I'll show you the example of that as well. Now we get to the Bard, and very much the same thing. The Bard begins on page 22 in the 8th printing, and here it is on the 10th, also page 22. And right now, in very few cases, I've noticed that they've switched character where an image is, and this is actually a new picture. All right, so this is a new image that has been added in. So, and as they described, there are a lot of new pieces of art that have been added to this as well. Now we get to the cleric, and the cleric begins on page 27 in both printings. So even with the addition of a new image, they have still kept the same page enumeration. So let's see if this image, so there's rally at 18th level, and let's see if that has changed. Nope, it's still rally at 18th level. And then change disposition. And I'm going to get to disposition a little bit later. There's a it's no longer called alignment. It's called disposition. And so it's not just a change in the wording, the nomenclature of it, but disposition actually is different than alignment system from your classic AD&D, which they based their alignment system on previously. And I will get to that as well. So it follows through with all of the character classes that they are page for page identical. The only differences is that in some cases they have moved the character image from one page to a different. So when I go to here, Cleric 29, that's identical. But when I go to page 30, the image that was on page 30 of a cleric has been either removed or moved. We'll see if, yes. So it has been removed. And a different image had been inserted. So that's the one change that I see as far as images being removed. Then we go to Druids, and we're right back on track with page 32 and 32 being identical. Again, page by page, all identical. Instead of this image being like you see here with the Druid plus 13, all they did was move the image to a different portion of the page. And so here we have, we're back to this page here, which is page 35, and they're right back on, or 36, and they're right back on track. Actually, this is 35. So, yeah, and that begins, 36 begins the fighter. So that's where we begin, and still on track. So I'm going to shift forward now and get you up to where the changes that I've come across start to show themselves. And that, so here's why I talk about the font change, right? So page 49, and I will flip through to page 49 here. And I am going to actually switch to this and go to page 49 so you can see. Let's get to near there. So I want to show you a comparison between the two. So this is 49. So this is the old, right? So, and you can see it's in a, it's almost in a script, or it's an italicized font. And the new is the same thing, same page, right? So you're looking at page 49, and now we're looking at page 49, and I will expand this so you can see. It's far more legible. All right, much easier to read. You know, I'll even expand this even further. You have to go 175 to be able to read this one, as opposed to, you know, 150. You can still clearly see this even at 125. So font change, definite improvement. Let me make sure that we're on the monk. Yes, we are. So I'm going to go to where they make that change that I already described, with removing alignment and changing things. Advanced smite evil. So instead of just smite, they might have turned it to smite evil. Nomenclature change once again. Let's see. And wizard should be the last. Multi-classing, so they have multi-classing rules, and this is on page 84, so let me see. I will flip through to page 84 here, and yes, so same exact page. Same exact layout. They've just changed the location of some of the charts, but they're all the same charts nonetheless. Class and a half is something that I think is unique to Castles and Crusades. I haven't come across it anywhere else. And then we get to races. Races on page 87. Races actually begins here on page 86 in the old. So they must have added some content in here that added to a whole page difference. And again, I will go through and look specifically for where that was. This is just a preview, and of course all of these things are subject to change. So we're on page 89, and let's see where we are. So yeah, so page 89 is still dealing with dwarves here, and elves come on page. Elves begin on page 90 here, but elves were on page 89 here. And the image comparison is just much better, in my opinion. So we will go to page 90 in this other version here. So elf, and I want to show you. So that was the image of the elves back in almost probably like 2004. And let's see that you're looking at the same thing. And this is now the new images for elves, which, just much crisper looking, let's say. So I like the art style, the art direction of this as well. Now I want to get to, let's see what's the fastest way to get to this. Let's go to 03, and I want to get to the part where they start talking about alignment and the difference in alignment. So completing the character, 98. Disposition. So so let me shrink this down a little bit. So completing the character, you have the persona. A character's persona and appearance are entirely the choice of the player designing the characters, keeping in mind a campaign setting and the needs of the castle keeper and other players. A character's appearance is a perfect opportunity to establish a persona the player envisions for the character. So you can choose everything from hair color to body size to blah, 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 whatever you want. None of it has a game mechanic impact. All right. Now getting to disposition. So this is one of the changes that really does take place here. So alignment is gone, disposition is put in. Disposition represents the most basic and essential aspects of a character's worldview and moral outlook. Disposition is a description of the fundamental moral outlook of every sentient creature. Is the character good or evil, chaotic or lawful? They may even be neutral. Disposition is very basic description and acts as an ethical and motivational guide for characters, non-player characters, and monsters. Disposition categories are general, and there is a lot of room for interpretation within each category. A character with a disposition of law and good may be a wandering knight devoted to the service of their liege lord, or some higher calling intent upon stamping out evil in the land. On the other hand, a wizard with the disposition of law and good may be devout that may devote themselves to acquiring ancient arcane magic to create a library for the benefit of all. A rogue with a disposition of chaos and evil may be a bandit robbing anyone and anywhere they can for their hedonistic desires, or a cleric devout to the wanton destruction of society's accomplishments and the eradication of those with whom they disagree. There is a great variation within each of the disposition categories described below. They should be used as a general guideline for motivations, actions, ethos, and worldview. Possible combinations. So this is where you get a very interesting nuance that they have here. So you have law and good or good and law. All right. It's not the same thing. All right. The focus is always on the first element, and then the variance comes from the second. So when you are law and good, law is your founding principle, and good is basically the the flavor to it, the nuance of it. So let me read this one through. Characters of this disposition are dedicated to following the strictures of society and respecting law and order. They act for the benefit of others and society, placing great value on truth, honor, and life. Those who list law first believe the rule of law is vital, but that if it is not moral and just, it is doomed to fail. For those who put good first, the moral society is paramount, and the law without morals must be rebuilt to support goodness and morality. So they might get to generally the same place. It's just where is their focus placed on? And so this really does create 17 different categories of an alignment system, under the previous nine categories of alignment, and it expands them to 17 now. So there are 17 possible combinations. The only one being true neutral is just true neutral, right? So that's why there aren't 18. And you can see these nuances through each of them. And so, law evil or evil law, and they actually do have a slight difference to them. So that is the first main change that I've seen in the system thus far. I will dig back. I'm going to switch views here. I will dig back in the next episode and start looking for where that extra page came from. And so I'm going to do that side-by-side comparison off camera, so that when I come by with the next video, episode 2, I'm going to lead in with that. I will get you caught up to speed and say, all right, this is where I found it. If I still can't find it, that means that a page worth of just minor description changes or whatnot had occurred throughout the thing, and maybe it is just the insertion of a new picture, a new graphic, and I will look in to see if that was the cause of it as well. So it might not even be textual increase. It might have been just the reformatting of where charts are, or the addition of new charts and the addition of new art. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you continue watching this series. So this will be thrown in to my overall playlist of Castles and Crusades, although it will be labeled as Reforged, the other, so you will be able to identify them very quickly if you want to follow along my digging through Reforged, and I'll keep you up to date as to any kind of correspondence or comments that are taking place in the Kickstarter. I had brought up some issues that I had with the spells, not the new names of spells, but just how they're presented, and so having some discussion with that, and we'll see where they kind of go along those lines as well. So anyway, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe and to share. And if you are a new subscriber, I always welcome comments. And so please feel free to comment on the video and or any of my other videos. And if you have any suggestions that you would like me to take a closer look at, if you have found where that extra page comes from, please feel free to reveal that to me. And for everyone else, enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you very much for popping in. And it's 4th of July this day that I'm videoing this. Blah. So enjoy your 4th of July if you do in fact celebrate it, and you'll have a great rest of your day. Take care.